Come on up. Yeah, so I put this up so everybody can just quickly read it. I'll save you some energy. This was case study 1 that Jessica CV group dug into. This was we had a good question. Who were these actual scenarios? Who came up with these? Arminda actually came up with 6 of these. Then Tony and I went through and we kind of tweaked a couple of them. We deleted 2, so we did 1 for some groups. So these are actually things that Arminda has experienced, and I can also like throw my 2 cents in. Like I did this my first year teaching. So they are real, and they're likely things that you will encounter over the course of your career. So that is the scenario. If you haven't read it, please take a peek. And I'm going to pop in that worldview.
Okay, so what we identified was our major problem was that our teacher was realizing that he wasn't incorporating his ELLs in his classroom as effectively as he could. His students were doing well and succeeding were those who were non-ELL students. And this would go into our kind of self in school, and kind of in the family as well, kind of section. So what we decided is that there's a bunch of different ways that you can really incorporate ELLs into your classroom more effectively. Really get them involved. One of the ways that we talked about was actually using their language, so bringing their language into the classroom and having them kind of use, especially for your terms and vocabulary in your ELLs, sciences, math classes, have them translate that term into their language and put that up on the board and have them teach their peers so that way they can be that smartest in the room for 5 minutes. We also talked about manipulatives as well, bringing in things that they can actually physically identify. So say you had a y-intercept, have them like physically go up to a board and put the y-intercept in, and things like that.
Awesome. And then did you talk about any other way we could publicly recognize students that wasn't just targeting the highest achievers?
Yes, we did. What we talked about was instead of, similar to what Martin said last week, I think on Thursday, targeting those students and having your most improved student be your like high achiever rather than your person who's consistently getting 95. So whoever's like improving most of your week.
Absolutely. And like for me now, that I've learned like improvement is far more important to me than achievement, because a lot of our high performers, they're going to be high performers every year. Right? It just carries with them because they have that just basic number sense in a math example. But what we're really trying to do to close the achievement gap is to bring up the students who are grade levels below. So by giving them shout outs and honors throughout the year to show that improvement, like to me, that's where you're going to make your money. And that's where you're going to see the students really thrive in getting that public recognition, the reward certificates, whatever it is you're using for improvement, not just achievement, which is awesome. Cool. Let's give some snaps for Team Jessica. All right, Mia. Team Mia. This is Team 2, Mia's case study. This was a ELA classroom. I mean, really for any of these, the content has nothing to do with the case study. So as you see, this has actually happened at my school as well. This was a school issue, not a teacher issue. As you can see, they tried to bring parents in, which is awesome, setting up coffee time. But after 2 rounds of parents not showing up from an 8 to 9 a.m. slot, teacher throws in the towel. So let's bring us back to this world model. Take it away, everyone.
All right, so yeah, the assumption with this scenario that the teacher is making is that every parent sort of has this cookie cutter schedule that they have. It's like a 9 to 5 work schedule, so that they would necessarily be able to attend this coffee session. So what we kind of suggested was that parents could like send out or teachers could rather like send out a generic survey to see when parents are available to come in and meet with the teacher. As well, along with that, we noticed that sort of fostering this teacher-parent-student relationship is often sort of used for teachers to get to the students. I think it's also important to go to report the students to get to the parents, because the parents know personally there was a time when like both of my parents worked nights, and the teachers that they sort of got to report most closely with were the ones that sort of like worked the beat with me and got to know me very well and used me to get to know my parents. So I guess it falls sort of into that parent, or parent, students, and self Venn diagram. Right there. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the connection you made between like the teacher and family, but also going inside and the student and family and building that connection there as well. That's awesome. Yeah, when I was at Gompers, parent attendance for conferences was just abysmal, and I was quick to make judgment on, oh, these parents don't care about their kids. Like, not stopping to think about, are parents even available to come in? And most of them weren't. They're working 2-3 jobs a night. So it's my job to reach out to the parents, try and do phone conferences, set up additional times instead of just throwing in the towel and saying, oh, these parents don't really care about their kids. It's a trap that is actually easy to fall into. So glad we cleared that up. Next is Team 3. We've got Austin. Team Austin. ELA Rockstars. All right.
All right. So in this particular case, we decided that the teacher doesn't really have an effective holistic lesson. Like she's putting African American history in just 1 month and assuming that their entire history is just like invention and ignoring civil rights movement and other parts of history. So our recommendation was adding African American history throughout the entire school year, like every chronological event, because it's part of American history. And so putting all those different cultures into her lesson and using primary source documents, self-to-text connections, real-world historical connections, and adding that to make it seem like American history is the history of a variety of cultures together, not just 1 month where we're going to study like inventors. So.
Awesome. And sciences. All right, the dress code.
So the first, tension we identified would be the tension between what is required and what is set as a norm for what an academic looks like. And it's very much a white middle class way of dressing. And that sets the standard for who belongs in the school and who doesn't. So the students may belong because they're dressed that way during that time, but what about their parents or their family members who aren't dressed that way? So it's saying a lot about their possibilities for achievement as well, so it creates a tension between the peers or the student and their family and their peers. The cost of the uniform might also be an issue. If that's not something that's already provided, that might create a tension for the family who has to provide for the uniform. And furthermore, the choice of colors, which in a neighborhood in South LA, to force a child to wear a blue shirt might also be an issue, considering like colors and age affiliation.
Awesome. Having taught in South LA for 3 years, like I wholeheartedly, this is a personal opinion, I agree with the uniform policy that we had. It wasn't this dominant culture requirement of shirt tie, what is professional, what is a business attire. It was polo shirts, and it did carefully select the colors. But there are a lot of safety considerations to take into account, which you already mentioned, and even at the middle school age, depending on what pocket of the community you're in, it prevents a lot of potential violence. But you hit all the key points right on the head. This wasn't simply about uniforms, this was about the type of uniform. You brought up great points about cost and some other considerations, so you guys rocked it, nice job. Moving on. Okay. This just kind of sums up what y'all just did. Take this. So there's one more slide that kind of hits on this historic, some of these historic issues we have in our country's history with education. Then we get to see this really cool video from a core member. So this quote here, while a lot of us aren't working with American Indians, we're not going to be placed in the TFA regions that teach American Indian population. It doesn't matter. It could be any set nationality or group. It has to do with power. The history of education in our country is really, really crazy when you start to dig into what is the purpose of school and why are schools the way they are. where a lot of what we have is what's called an assimilation-based education, which is basically the opposite of a culturally responsive education. The same could be said for our English language learners, who all of us are currently teaching and will be teaching, to where we have schools that don't allow English or Spanish to be spoken whatsoever, where it's illegal for a teacher to teach in Spanish, where a student speaking in their native tongue is banned. Just crazy, crazy stuff. And when I saw this quote, I thought back to the graduate school course I took at LMU about culturally responsive teaching, and this is the book that instantly popped to mind. Has anybody read Pedagogy of the Oppressed? A couple hands, part of it. Like, this is a book that I absolutely recommend that everybody read, which is the first time I've said this all year, all summer. But it brings up a lot of concepts about education, a lot of challenges. One of them is the banking model, where we consider traditional education considers students piggy banks, where they're empty vessels, and it's like our job as educators to just fill these empty vessels with all of the knowledge we have to make them successful. It takes into account that students have nothing to contribute from their own cultures or their own lives, and it's just a very, very shallow approach to learning. He also talks about how education is power. This book is banned in a lot of totalitarian countries because it brings out the idea that if you have a solid education, you can find power and rise against those who are trying to control power. So education is a tool to keep those who they want to be oppressed actually oppressed. So that all ties into assimilation-based education. We still see it. That hook I was going to play directly led into this about, in this Tucson, the city of Tucson, they are eliminating any cultural studies classes because it basically makes white people look bad. And that was straight out of the board of directors' mouth. It's crazy. So our counter to all of this is by providing culturally responsive education, we're going to light a fire in our students and take everything that they bring to the table as a means to basically setting them up for success and giving them the power that they need. We'll get more on that later, but for now it's going to be the video on a core member, Patrick. So remember what I said before was assume best intentions. This is a clip where Patrick is teaching a history lesson, or a high school government lesson on Locke and Hobbes, and his objective is something along the lines of what's the balance that we seek between freedom and safety in society. He, in his vision and goals for his classroom, he really wants to have current events as like a driving force for his curriculum, to keep students in touch with what's going on in the real world, and then to have them make that connections, which is really ambitious. But things don't go so well in his lesson. So again, assume that his intentions are good. He really wants his students to experience the Locke and Hobbes in a much more engaging manner than straight out of the textbook. But we do want to also be very critical and identify what's holding Patrick back from reaching success with his students. And then if we're going to be constructive, what improvements could Patrick make to make this a better lesson? We can talk about everything, open-ended. So not just necessarily cultural issues, but planning, execution, management, like all the idle sessions that we've experienced can all be factored in. So here is the clip with Patrick.
So, what we're going to do is I will put a statement on the board. If you think the statement relates to Locke, you're all going to put an L in your head. You get to I know, you get to slash it to your teacher, right? And if you guys think it's Hobbes, so I come up with, you're going to make like an H with your pinkies, okay?
You should have done like anyway.
Anyway, Locke or Hobbes, when you guys have H's? Hey, what you got? I believe in a very strict, strong government to keep order.
Give it them.
Alright? Whereas Locke was more lenient. We'll get to that. Who developed a social contract? Locke or Hobbes? Show me the H's or L's. Can I get you guys quiet? Thank you. Back table 3 and 4. Table So we got a few people.